So it's very simple path parameters, and you pass the ID and look for the ID, and then get the specific record from the service. You see the return, the user role, the domain models. That's you define it here. So you request body, you pass the object, save to the object into the database, returning void return. You can also return the class itself, the domain model itself. But after the savings, you can get the JSON string, what type of input you already, what values you gave it. But for this case, I would just put about void methods, and simply it doesn't return anything. But we can get it after when you save it, successfully save it, and then you got the get methods to get the record. But you can do a different way what you like to do. Here's the request path. You can delete it, just pass the request path, you pass the ID, and this is our functions that you implement is already, and into them our service implementations, pass the ID. And this is one of the little bit different implementation. We look for, we pass the ID, we look for the specific records from the user role, and if the record is there, then we set the new values what we need. So we pass the ID again into our new object, the setting object. We change the digit value, we change the user role and user role ID, and then update the user role what object you need. So that means if you have these values, you just simply get it from there, and after that just you set the values and updated values. This is very simple and very standard. If you need a complex queries, maybe more parameters, you can use also the request parameters and path parameters in combination depending on. That's why I said you can follow my previous screencast. We have many examples how can you complex queries, search queries, and then you can do also those things, the complex search, even though pagination, sortings, all things is there. But for this case, a very simple demonstration how it works. The main focus is to implement the services very quickly, and to show you different Java clients, how can you communicate, how can you test it in the programmatically into the REST clients. That's the idea today. So that means we release it, our service, we define our models, our domain models, we define the respective annotations, and then we define the repositories, we define the services interfaces, we implement the service implementation, we define the controllers, the all respective controllers. You see that we already talk about this one, user role controller, user registration controller is there. That's very simple, very straightforward, and very professional way to handle those things, really efficient way. So just you can request controller, the same things and same flag. This is, you can see, or that's I already said to you, this is the one of the key. Okay, you have many services, then you can flag it like this. So user role, user registration, and so on and so forth. So all the implementation is done. Then you need to be, that's I said in the page of the Spring Boot profiling application. That's I already talk about how can you compile, how can you deploy the application in thousands of machines, any part of the world. This is the Spring Boot profiling. Those who are new, just follow my previous screencast. There is a many example how can you Spring Boot profile works, and then you can get clear idea. So we defined our applications, which application need to be start out the port. We define the port number. If you have a port, that's why I said this is not a standard 8080 port in the Tomcat, but you can define it here like this way. If you have this 8080 port is used for other application, or even though this application, that's why I say this is really professional and standard way to configure your application or deploy your application or build your standalone jar files. And this way, so we define your jar files just in the if your administrative department, or you try to deploy this application from the machine from the USA or Canada, then you just simply need to change your machine name and then your IP address and which port are free for these machines. That's all, because and that's all. It's automatically, it's really dynamically works. Thus you need to change these files externally, change your configuration files, and then it's deployed the application and it works automatically. That's why I say it's really standard way to handle this. So we define the port, and this is a local host I am running for. If you are cloud, and then just cloud IP address and URL, then it works automatically. And this is the application name that you already saw in the application flags in my URL is the application name. That's the REST API in-memory DB. Let's say put it like in memory way, and you can do it what you would like to do. Maybe you can put it in the versions and so on and so forth, and that's the depending. And we put it like the context path that's your context path you are looking for. This is the context path that's you are looking here. The application name and context path same. So this is the context path for the when the application, the URL. So this is our IP address of your deployed machines where you try to deploy the application, or where you run the application. There's some microservices, and this is the port that you use it, and this is the context path, and this is the REST request mappings, the base request mapping, and the specific function request mapping part of your application, of your service. Sorry. So we define it here. This is the MongoDB, the database that's we already talked about. This is the driver, HSQL driver. This is your password of your database. For the reality case, maybe MySQL database username and password, or Postgres database username, password, and this so on so forth, and the respective driver, maybe the MySQL driver or a Postgres driver, and so on so forth. For this simplicity case, I just put it in the in-memory database, just like when application started, the application data will be there. When the application is died or you close it, all data is gone. This is in memory. But in the real life, the application, you can store this data in the permanent storage in the MySQL, Postgres, Oracle, MongoDB, Cassandra, Elasticsearch, Redis, depending on what type of database you try to use it. So we implement the database. We already run the database. If you see the data, the application is running, the Tomcat started the port number 990. So we can start the some Postman test. That's I already talking about. Explain you a little bit more this case. So let me do some Postman test is here. So if I go to the I1, so if it's the existing data application is running. So if you can do the, maybe we can do the 999s and 888, do more. This is just very simple test cases like 676, and then you can hit it as its status is okay, and then so on and so forth. Could I get it this ones? So we can do okay. This is the last one because application is already started. Let's do the second one. Let's do the 999, and then let's do the 111. Send it. This is the one of the issues like in memory failings if application started. So we have two records, one record 1, record 2. If I try to get it like record 1, so you see the specific record is getting, and then if you try to get it like record 2, and a specific record is getting. So you see that's URL pattern that's we already explained in here. The controller, so you see the controller, we have the IP address and then port number. This is the base URL and the specific functions. So it says this one, and this is specific part of the path you are passing. So if I go there, so you see this is our context path, this is the base URL, your request mapping, this is a function name, this specific ID in the path. So it's clear for you. So, and if you have a update, you can see the update part of the user role. Just you can update this body of the functions, maybe, and test, and then lay down the test. That we are updating the second object of the your record. So you can update the second record. So put method is selected here. That means it. So it's updated. Let's see. It is the second methods, and it is getting the updated properly. So see the second method is updated really properly. That's we expected. And then you can have the delete methods. That's very simple, straightforward. That's the delete functions that we already explained how the URL pattern delete. You see the delete pattern is like you have a context path, URL, and delete function, and pass the URL, and it's deleted. And then let's see, its delete function is working. So we try to delete the object 1. So let's see the object 1 is there. So you see the object 1 is not near. So it's straightforward. So we have a user registrations role, and then also maybe you have hundreds of the test cases for all the combination of parameters, input parameters, because this is the REST services testing part you can need to be do your company. If you are API developer or middle layer there or web service developer, you need to be use the maybe the SOAP UI or Postman. Is I found is Postman is really good tools for the implementation for testing the microservices or REST services, or even though you can do also the SOAP services testing here with the SOAP